reconvene the meeting back together. We'll start budget discussion. We do have, I think you have a memorandum from Jeff Shea. There was some request as to what would a position of an assistant town engineer look like.
Oh.
And what roles would it serve. So I wanted to make sure everyone had a copy of that. We have Jamie Rabbit here because there were some questions about the capital proposal and what those expenditures are. So I'd invite Jamie to come up and just say a few words about that.
Is that CIP or CIP?
That was CIP.
And I do have a handout.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jamie.
Thanks, Jamie.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you, sir. You read my mind.
Oh, yeah. This is
Okay, I think this past Saturday, there may have been a few questions on the capital side of the planning and community development budget, which was a request by the department, and then that was forwarded through the first selectman's office of $222,500, which in the information I gave you last Thursday night, you had the projects list of that, which was the plan of conservation development, the WETOG zoning regulations, form-based code, regulatory review. It didn't say education. It had regulatory review and update to land use regulations. I discussed educational programs with the commission, but I've added that in there now. And development of project studies, develop concept plans, urban design and architectural for key projects within Simsbury Center Code District, the Route 10 Hop Meadow Corridor, both south and north of Simsbury Center, as well as developing design guidelines and architectural standards for the form-based codes. I have attributed some dollar amounts to those individual kind of subject matter. For POCD, $130,000, WETOG, $10,000, regulatory review, $27,500, and development of project studies of $45,000, and then design guidelines of $10,000 for a total of $22,500.
Now, I was talking with Jamie. These are, some of these you might want to put in operating budget. You know, it's appropriate to put them in operating budget as well. They're in the CIP because they are related to projects that will be done by the town. But I just wanted to put that out there as an option if people wanted to consider it for operating.
Within the budget of the department, which includes land use, planning, director, as well as building, there is a professional services line item. There's roughly, depending on which subject matter you're going to or heading, there's between $1,500 and $2,500 in those line items.
Which is not really sustainable for the projects we have coming down the line.
Correct. I would not be offended, or if the capital was moved into that, that would be an option for you. But again, some of these are one-time occurring expenses associated with projects. I will clarify too, these are kind of middle ranges. The POCD could be, 110 to 150, depending on what comes back from the RFQ, as well as those. I tried to take the middle of the road on what I expected projects to come in at.
So one of the questions that came up on Saturday, and thank you for this, was the POCD is going to be done over 12 to 18 months?
The POCD, just from a project standpoint, the POCD, I intend to RFQ if funds are available in April.
Okay.
I would hope to have consultants selected by June, and perhaps, with the municipal side of government, most consultants are willing to take on projects knowing the first bill would be in there in July,
Yep.
and funds would be available. That is a 16 to 18 month process from RFQ to final adoption. So there would be some carryover into FY18. But I don't know what I would do is if the project came in at 130 and funds were only put in there for 110 and 20 wasn't put in for FY18. How do I finish a project? So similar to some of the testimony you received earlier tonight, from a fiscal standpoint, I have to request what it requires to complete the project in FY17.
And that money, because it's in capital, does stay there, so it'd
It's
be
there for
over the
5
2
years.
fiscal years. Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah, and I would certainly want you to, I guess, so the question came up, because the POCD is subject to planning approval, and we have a history in this town of that not going so smoothly, whereas the others are truly just studies, is there a concern with doing POCD while you're doing other studies that could potentially be changed by the outcome of the POCD?
No, there's always that, I shouldn't say no. There's always that chance, Sean, but I'm relatively confident in the fact that your 2007 POCD was pretty on point and
Okay.
pretty targeted with regards to what Simsbury was trying to envision. So I really see it as an expansion and update to the 2007. I think a lot of the tough issues have been vetted either in that planning process or due to the Hartford charrette, the Simsbury Center Code charrette, and the result of the Simsbury Center Code. I think, so targeting WETOG with a form-based code, targeting the northern part of town, those were already identified in 2007, and I think we're bringing that to fruition now, and we'll move that forward in the 2017 plan.
Okay, and again, when you said that it was all going to be some synergies initially, that sounded good, and then when we started talking on Saturday, we said, wait a minute, POCD is voted on where everything else is truly, and again, so I appreciate that clarification. Sorry for you.
I wouldn't see anything that would come out of 2017's POCD that said, don't do a plan for the northern part of town on Route 10.
Okay.
I don't foresee that occurring. I see some nodding heads there that you may be in agreement that Route 10, northern part of town, has been targeted for many years. Some may be of the opinion it has been ignored for many years, and I want to move that to the forefront.
Okay. Appreciate that.
Yeah, that has been discussed for many years. In fact, we've
Oh, yeah.
had many people in public audience request a charrette for the north.
Right.
And there's now a northern consortium of businesses who are pushing for that, and truly there is a need there.
Agreed.
Again, I'm still sure and confident that with any project, there are supporters and detractors. We're trying to get a few more supporters as well.
Not in our town.
No? Can I hold you to that, Mike?
Sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm in trouble anyway.
Any other questions for Jamie on this?
I
Okay.
appreciate this, Jimmy.
Thanks
It
for that
does help me
extra
a lot.
information.
So, Sean, do you have I don't know if you have it online or just in your head, the notes that we've been collecting and what we have outstanding there? Oh, very exciting.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jimmy.
I have done this once before, so I anticipate that might happen. Just gonna plug it in here so you can see it up on the top. This year, we're calling it a notes page. In the past, this has been sort of
Wish list
a
page.
wish list.
Well, we're
Couldn't go a
changing.
meeting without saying wish list. I miss it. All right, let me see if I can find a way to zoom this. Hold on. It's cleaner on. It's an HDMI, but it doesn't. The SCTV can't see it, so I need to get this little. All right, I'll just shrink it. Yeah, it's gonna have to be good enough. All right. So, hold on, sorry. Just trying to get this better. Can everyone see it okay up there, or?
Yeah.
There we go. That's a little better.
No, I'm kind of okay.
All right. So I kind of broke out at least the things that were brought up to be noted as operating impact, CNR or capital. Really, the only CNR that I have noted is the body camera, which does have an operating impact, of course, right? 1/5 of that. So that's why you'll see that there. You know, from the first day of the first budget we talked about, there was this discussion, and I don't know if you want to come back to it or not, but there was the $1,000 line item.
I'd be okay with letting that one go.
Okay, all right, move to the next one. Increase facility maintenance, $5,000.
Can you just remind me what that was?
Yeah.
All right, I gotta check
That's
my other
from
notes.
Mr. Roy, if we did the payoff of the spend to save on the.
Oh, that's the spend to
Is that the
save?
spend?
No, that's what we would pep back, right? Oh, no, that's from Jerry.
Yeah,
That's
this one
from,
was- This is
Jerry.
Parks and Rec.
If you want to do
Parks and Rec.
5,000.
Yeah, it's right here. I don't see Jerry.
what we don't have up there, maybe that's my fault, we don't have the request from Mr. Roy, that if we pay off the on-bill financing, to put some money back into the Public Works budget.
Yeah, we would need.
But maybe that's related to the capital, so we'll get to that. And, we heard from Lisa Kareem that she has 4,000 she'd like back, and that
Right.
they're gonna realize some savings in their electricity.
Right,
bill
you
as
have
well.
this, I believe there's a separate memo on that. I mean,
Yes.
ultimately, what I think your proposal was that would be a net
Yes.
wash though, right?
Yes.
So, right.
Precisely.
That was not on this list here.
That was if everything went back to Public Works. That was not
Well, it would still be a net wash to the operating
to
budget.
the operating budget.
Yeah.
But it would help the library if it
Sure.
went back to
We could
that.
absolutely do
That would
that.
be a,
That would be a change on their sheet.
for the library's balance sheet. That would.
Yeah. All
so-
these would be changes on the different department head
Yeah.
sheets, yes.
Okay, so, all right, next on the list here, the central admin conferences we talked about, an increase of 2,000. At one point, it was noted the Farmington Valley Visitors Association, which I know we had spoken to on Saturday, would be a cut of $4,000 if not funded. The Register of Voters salary increase, I just wanted to, I did double check the statutes on this, and increases for 4-year elected terms can only happen after 2 years have been completed.
So it
that
can
would have
start
to
to
be
January of 20.
January of 2017.
Yeah.
So I think that, and it originally was a 5,000 request, so that would be a total of 25,000. Although I guess that would be one of those that does have a carry forward effect to the next budget. The staff engineer position, current in the budget now at $70,000. I'm sorry, not in the budget now, requested at 70,000, not included at 70 at the moment. Then there's the body camera operating impact, again, if you are familiar with CNR impacts, they're spread out over 5 years, so the immediate FY17 impact would be a savings of $11,950. And then tonight, you discussed the 4,400 add back for the part-time reference librarian hours. Good note there. And then other notes that were made, I believe these were all on Saturday, were capital, move up the street lights, combine both phase 1 and 2 of the street light capital item. And then 2 recommendations to the Board of Finance to consider paying cash for the Veterans Memorial capital project.
I have an update on that. I did have a chance to talk with our town engineer, Jeff Shea, and he strongly recommends that we do that because they can't expend the steep grant until they have the full funding for the project, and if there is this gap findings, they need to have that authorized, so it might delay going out to bid if we have to wait till July 1 for the CIP on that. So that might be a good use of excess funds, is to do that with the current year excess when we do transfers at the end.
Right, and the steep grant also, if I'm not mistaken, is reimbursable, so you
Yes.
have to spend money first to
Yeah.
get the grant.
Which is why they want you to have it.
So which one would that affect, or just?
That's on one of the capital.
It would just take it out of capital, so it would have a
Right.
minimal effect on the operating budget because, I mean, I'd imagine that the Board of Finance would pay for cash for that anyway.
So, what I did here was just sum up on the operating side, basically sum up the percent impact, so to speak, on the overall budget, which would be a 0.36% increase. And over here is the, hold on. I'm just gonna shrink this temporarily then. You're currently at 375. If everything on this list, both positive and negative, was included, you would be at 4.11.
I just want to, before we get into conversations, I know the mill rate setting by the Board of Finance is really within the Board of Finance's purview, but I do want to make the point, because this is such a complicated budget, that even though you're seeing a 375, if the state, and this is a big if, but if the state comes back with a revenue share on the sales tax, the state comes back with the make-whole and the car tax, there are residents in town who will be looking at a net tax impact of paying $4 less per month. And I know that's kind of wacky, but if you think about the average savings per household with 2 cars, if an average household has 2 cars, the average savings per car is about $42 to $50 per car. So $80, which works out to about $6 per month in car savings for the median. Now, if you're like us, and my husband's car is 2003, those savings will not be as great for a household like us. But I do want to sort of put things in perspective. You know, if you pay $5,000 a year in taxes, the net impact of the state, if they come through with everything, you might be saving, you know, $4.77 a month. If the state doesn't do the sales tax, you're kind of looking at a flat, or maybe just a net tax increase of $2 per month. So there are things out there when we talk about what's going on. I just want to put it in scope in terms of the amount of money, and it's going to be different from everyone. I can't say everyone's going to get a tax decrease this year because we don't know what everyone's car tax does. That depends on the age of your car. But there are potentials out there for some people to come in flat and other people to come in with actually savings, depending on what the state does. And, you know, the board of, right now we're about $208,000 off of flat tax right now, and if everything what the state does. So the Board of Finance may use some of the extra funds to reduce the gap. And so that, I know this is complicated, and I was trying to explain it to a resident earlier, and he goes, God, Lisa, this is so complicated. How do you narrow this down? And I guess the bottom line is there's a lot that's happening at the state that could affect us. We don't understand how the impact is, but there are some scenarios where people could be paying less between their property and car tax than they did last year if the state comes through. If the state doesn't come through, there are scenarios where it might be flat, depending on what the Board of Finance does. There are some scenarios, the worst case scenarios, is that, you know, you might be paying 16 to 17 more a month if the state really implodes. I don't think that's going to happen, and that's if you're paying $10,000 a year in taxes. So there are so many unknowns out there, and it's very difficult to sort of come to a consensus. And this board is not, it's not our purview to talk about the mill rate, but I just want to go back to the fact that the mill rate is set not just by the budgets, but, you know, but the budgets are a part of it, and of those budgets, the Board of Ed is the driving budget. That's 70%. But there's also state grants, the collection rate assumptions, what we're getting in fees. There are all sorts of other factors that go into setting the mill rate. So when you think about percent increases, that's one factor we look at, but it's not what moves the mill rate by itself. There are lots of other things that impact it. So with that, yeah.
I just think in particular it's worth noting because we see so much at the state level about, you know, not just in the governmental level, but in terms of economic development, and we need to keep reminding ourselves that Simsbury, unlike the rest of the state, is actually in a growth phase, and our grand list has grown in the last year. So we are actually rising up despite all these other
We do have a
lovely things
fortunate,
coming out of Hartford. But so, you know, that our spending would grow would follow logically, even though what we're hearing at the state level is
and one
quite
thing,
contradictory.
yes, and one thing I will say, tomorrow I'm attending the CCM legislative policy update, where we will get the most updated numbers from our lobbyists as to where they think we're headed. We did get some previews of those over the weekend from costs. They're beginning to meet with the legislators, trying to see where things are going to come in. I am hearing that they're going to keep the make-whole at least for this year for the car tax. Is that guaranteed? I don't know. The sales tax has still not been reduced. I did check in with Elizabeth Garza over the weekend from Council of Small Towns. She said as of yet they aren't talking about that. But you know, like I say, I can't tell you for sure. Yeah.
I'm concerned, not even looking at the mill rate. We have to give a budget that we've made a reasonable attempt to look at our expenses and where we think our revenue is going to come from, and be as balanced as we can, or use what knowledge we can. I don't see how the state can do all the things they've promised and make us whole. That's my concern. And while we have a lot of building going on in town, we know full well that next year the Hartford will be off. So we're down $1.5 million. And I'm kind of feel like we're getting close to maybe not a cliff, but a significant drop revenue-wise. I don't have any solutions other than...
Well, I do. We are going to see that there is a gap, but the Board of Finance has been planning for that for the last 5 years. So that's why you have reserves. You can smooth it
I
over.
understand.
Because once, there will be a gap, but over time, there will be a substantial increase. So it's just a temporary gap, and the Board of Finance has been planning for it. But that said, you're right to raise questions. The one caution I'll put is, we have to deal with what we're given. I mean, the
I
state
agree.
could cut ECS, and that would change the whole thing. The state could cut a gazillion things, but it's very hard to plan your budget that way. Sometimes you have to go with what you know at the time you have it. But Sean?
Right. So I don't disagree with you that we are well reserved. The challenge we're going to have is that rating agencies will penalize us if you use reserves to pay operating expenditures. They don't penalize you for capital items, I believe. They don't penalize you to save money, but if you use reserves for operating
No, I agree.
expenditures, that absolutely puts your bond rating in jeopardy.
Absolutely
They've said
agree.
that to us before at prior meetings. So, I don't disagree with everything, and Lisa, I think you're right. We need to understand, and I've been pessimistic about the state, I have my personal opinions, but exclusive of the state, our grand list is not going to grow enough, as it's projected now, to absorb the loss of the Hartford. And that's before our contractual increases,
Right.
right? So we're going to lose $1.5 million of guaranteed revenue,
Yes.
and we don't have enough necessary, we're going to have some grand list growth, you're right, it's good, we're bucking the trend, but we don't have enough coming online to balance out that 1.5, in addition to our historical 1.5% to 3% increases that we've seen on both the Board of Ed and the Board of Selectmen side. So this is a unique year, in my opinion, where I don't normally advocate for this, but we really need to think about next year
Absolutely.
as much as this year. And I know that's hard.
No, I don't disagree.
So, again, I know there is a wish list, I know there is concern, at least I think you did a very good job coming in at 375. I've spent a lot of time looking at this budget. I'm still struggling with where we should be at, knowing what's coming down the line, regardless of what the state chooses to do. I mean, we've got our own challenges, so, and again, if we have Armageddon, which the Hartford and the state pulls back on us, that's significant.
Joe did an initial projection.
Correct.
And that
And
comes
his-
in 781, right?
His projection didn't include normalized budgetary increases.
Right. So, that's right. But it also didn't include some of the projects we have going to. So,
It did, though, at least the spreadsheet I had. It left off historical budget increases. So
oh, right.
we theoretically have close to enough, not quite from what I saw, to get us a whole from the Hartford, but again, that assumes flat state revenue. Actually, I think it's still projecting an increase in ECS next year, which,
I don't know if it is or not.
so there's a lot of moving parts, and again, I can have my opinion, and everybody's tired of hearing it in terms of what we're gonna get from the state, so I'll leave that alone, but the need is there for me, but I was struggling with 375 to begin with.
I was too. It was very
4.1
hard.
is a non-starter for me, but I need some more time to think about this, and
Yeah, and I would just, that's why I'm trying to talk about the percentages, because the percentages are shocking considering where we've been over time. But they're not shocking if you look at what the impact is to the regular taxpayer. I mean, we're talking about possibly flat, possibly reduced, or an increase. Now, the worst-case scenario, you're right, is not great. So there is that potential if the state absolutely implodes. I don't know how you live sort of with this uncertainty in budget. I mean, we have to budget with what we have now, and then, but I don't disagree. And that's why this budget has been so difficult to put forward. Part of, in there is, if we do keep the sales tax, there will be the cap coming online next year at 2.5. The frustrating thing is it really penalizes those towns like us who have kept our budget so flat for so many years. Had we been increasing more incrementally, this cap would not be as draconian because we would have been where we needed to be. But because we gave our residents the time value of their money by keeping budgets flat, we will be behind if that comes to fruition. So just caution there in terms of, I mean, you're right. How do you even know how to budget? We don't know what the state's going to do. But so on the one hand, we're worried about losing money from the state. On the other hand, we're worried about this cap out there, potentially out there, and how do you balance the two? It is the most difficult budget for both those reasons, because there is so much uncertainty. I think, Mike, you're right. We can anticipate that the state's situation will only get dire next year. And it's unfortunately at the time when we lose some of that revenue from the Hartford. It's just a poor, timing, but it is what it is.
But don't worry, we'll go to the casino, we'll make it all back.
Okay.
No, we won't.
Yeah, can we put the casino in the Hartford building?
No,
There you go.
that I
I'm
do not
kidding.
support.
That's- Joan, I was kidding.
That I do not support. So I think you're right. And so the Board of Finance is meeting tomorrow night, and I do encourage members of this board to attend that. I've been asked to
agree.
attend, and to the extent if you can make yourself available. It's kind of strange that they're going to be talking about our budget before we pass our budget. And before we've had a chance to present it. But I think part of the reason is they're looking at things right now is because of the uncertainties with their state, and they're trying to budget and figure out what's a reasonable, not a cap, but a, guideline to set, given those uncertainties. And so we don't know for sure. So it's not a typical process. It does make me a little uncomfortable to talk about it by myself with them without you there when we haven't passed the budget. So to the extent
We'll be
you
there
can,
and have you
thank
back.
you. Who's bringing the
Be
pizza?
there, we'll be there,
All right,
yep.
thank you. I would like you
Yep.
there. And so my recommendation tonight is not to take a motion. And first of all, I don't think we even have the motions ready. Am I right? Yeah, there are written legal specifications we need to do. I wouldn't recommend it right now because we don't know what the Board of Finance is they're gonna give some direction tomorrow night, and without that direction, it doesn't make sense to do something and then have to go
Have it
back.
sent
and-
back, yeah.
Would it be possible for Sean to email us what he's got up on the screen? As a draft, or however we need
Or Just
to?
as a proposal or.
Is a PDF okay? Because these numbers are all tied. to the
PDF is
backup.
fine.
Yes,
Yeah,
PDF.
That's-
that's great.
That's
That's
fine.
actually
Email it
better
to you,
for me.
it'll have.
Don't give us the
That would be great.
No.
Thank you.
I don't need a whole bunch of number signs.
That I can do.
But these are subject to further discussion, right?
Oh, yeah,
absolutely.
yeah. These
We
are-
are-
It's just a starting point.
Yeah.
This is just where
I
the
mean, we
list
can
is.
say
We're not
tonight,
even-
is there anything we want to take off the consideration list? We could do that.
Well, if we start discussing, I mean, I'm sure we can spend a fair amount of time on each and every one of them.
Yeah. I think we ought to just leave the discussion.
Just leave them
Yeah.
for now, leave the
Yeah.
discussion, okay.
That would be my suggestion.
All right,
Board of Finance starts at 5:45?
5:45,
Okay.
and it will be in the Board of Education room. Then Sean, this board had asked Sean to prepare a where are we in the budget scenario, and you've had a chance to do a brief analysis, but I do want to point out we are not through the year, so it's still just tentative numbers. Sean, did you want to give an update on that?
Yeah, it's more of a verbal update. I have, here, let me pull up my little file. Basically, I talked to, notes. Hold on one second.
Bless you.
Thank you.
I went through February. We're still doing things in March, obviously. February is pretty much booked, which means 8 periods through 8 months of the 12. So on trend, if it's truly a monthly expense, obviously it would be about 2/3. So look through those spots in the budget. I mean, the big one, the one that stands out as the one that is going to be favorable, just a matter of how favorable, is in Tom's budget. And I can let Tom speak to it with the public works overtime that we talked about. Roughly, I think we were looking at around $45,000 favorability there. And let me see.
There may be a little in Jerry's, but his budget, overtime budget is very small.
Well, I mean, honestly, his overtime was already tracking right at 2/3 also. So I talked to Jerry and he said it may just be where it was budgeted, but he was on track. Arguably you could have another maybe 5,000 there. It's a much smaller budget than Tom's.
And he doesn't need the overtime as much as Tom does during a storm, because some of his
Right.
clearing can be done offline.
And I'm just not sure all of his is actually winter related. He
No,
does
right,
field
precisely.
lining for
Right.
sports programs and things that I'm not, they actually may pick up in the spring, so I'm hesitant to count on anything there. Between Public Works and Parks, we did see some natural gas and other utility savings. Things are tracking lower than we budgeted, roughly. I mean, again, I don't want to quote any solid number, but they were in around the $10,000 ballpark. Talked to Lisa Cream, actually, and kind of to the question Sean had earlier, I had identified what I thought was roughly $5,000 or so in her salary line items, but that was being earmarked, and it turns out, as I talked to her again, partially for the funding of that, of the technology things we were talking about. So some of these things, when we say favorable, they're favorable, and people are doing exactly what you're doing, which is identifying things they need to use them for. So I had to kind of cross that off the list.
Is there anything where we're, I mean, obviously the administrative line, we're high because of our heart and hypertension payment.
Into the which hit legal.
Yeah,
fuel
hit
line item,
legal.
Right. There really aren't a lot that are standing out. The police overtime is a little bit north of where, of trend, but that's something that hopefully that's been a result of some injuries where officers have been out. And I talked just tonight. I mean, again, I know it was from Saturday till today. There wasn't a ton of time to talk to every department head, but they think that they're still going to be okay. The major medical, we are trending slightly favorable, probably $15,000 or so. Anyway, summing up, I am comfortable around the $70,000 to $80,000 amount. I was hoping we were closer to $100,000 favorable. Having double checked with actually Jamie just as the meeting was going on a couple of things I noticed in his budget. Again, some of these things are either being corrected or they're being earmarked. So.
And we just passed the legal fees for, for 200 Hot Meadow. We're hoping that the Silverman Group, they can work out a deal. Sometimes when you do it, they help pay some of the costs for the town. But that we may go over on legal for this year, or at least.
We passed something specifically in zoning, or in planning and zoning, to allow
Right.
for that.
Precisely.
To share those dollars.
Precisely. And
So-
so that's where we're hoping to work out some, but legal are always an unknown, and we do have so many developments going on. There is so much unknown right now, and those are good, there are some bad unknowns out there that we don't know with, like, on the state side, but there's some good unknowns too with all the development we have coming, so, but it does make it very difficult to budget.
Yeah.
Just a little.
So I said most of the favorability we're seeing is really on the revenue side. We're pretty close to flat on the
Yes.
expense
Pretty close to
side.
flat. Yeah, I mean, that's why, and some of these are conservative estimates, no doubt. I mean, I'm trying to weigh some of those that are trending slightly higher. I don't want to oversell and make it sound like every line item is favorable. Some are
Just to be clear, I'm not looking for places to cut departments back because I
No.
think they over budgeted. I want to make sure, quite honestly, the opposite, that we're not over in places because we were short. So again, obviously, we had a very mild winter. I wouldn't want to change overtime.
No, I do not.
Public Works, that's a bad idea.
And from my end, again, what we kind of talked about on Saturday is, I'm gonna give you an accurate report of where we're at, and it was a so far blessed winter in two ways, both with the fact that we didn't have a lot of snowstorms, but we also, for the most part, other than that one bone-chillingly cold week, the temperatures have been extraordinarily warm,
Right.
So the
which is why
pavement
we were
won't.
trending so well on our natural gas.
Right.
I just read a report, it's actually the warmest
Yeah.
February we've had since civilization.
So global warming is
So-
beneficial to the bottom line this year.
At least in Simsbury.
That's right, that's right. And, a couple more years, we could have, a beachfront, a whole new demographic here. But, again, so, as Sean and I talked, I said, we could comfortably say, we're looking at $45,000 in terms of overtime that we could return.
But we may want to put that in the spend to save and realize savings to Tom's budget and the library's budget next year.
Exactly, and I think, and again, not usually on numbers that large, but on other items, we've used that to correct for where we've had shortcomings in other areas. We had a number of also unanticipated expenses this year that, again, we've found, we're gonna find ways to make up for those.
And that's the way we've always done department budgets, that we ask them to stay within their budget, but we fully expect, and why it's permitted, that you do the intra-department transfers to make up one line, because budget are an art. Maybe you go over 500 here and under 500 there, and you just, as long as you stay within your budget number, this board has been very supportive. and the Board
Particularly
of
in the
Finance.
highly variable worlds that some of our directors.
Especially for Department of Public Works, and probably Culture Parks and Rec, that are so highly weather dependent.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. We know this, yeah.
I mean, if it stays warm and they can keep playing golf, that's huge. That helps out this year, but we
Right.
may get snow early
Right.
next year, so.
So that's why I'm hesitant.
That was a dirty.
I'll go to the corner.
Tom to Tom dirty look happening right there.
You changed my other number there.
And that's why I'm sort of hesitant to rely on the numbers that Sean is reporting, because they may be we're 2/3 through the year. There's another third with lots of unknowns out there, and,
And again, the only thing I was hunting for was if we were short on budget items
Right.
and not allocating enough. You know, we've had
Yeah.
those discussions in the past. Are we not putting enough money in salt? Are we not putting enough in drainage supplies? You know, those are corrections that we've made because we knew where,
Right.
you know, we were coming into January every year and we didn't have enough money in the salt budget, and that seemed like a foolish thing to keep doing.
Yep.
So we made those adjustments. So I'm glad to hear that. Doesn't sound like we need to make any of those adjustments.
I didn't see it.
That doesn't add any additional pressure that we already have, so.
We do, when I go through with the department heads, one of the things we look at is year-to-date spend, and we do look at trends to try and evaluate, and what was spent in the prior year. So we do have some gauges from which we go off, and then we ask, are there any extraordinary circumstances that might impact that we haven't thought about? So department heads are really good with that. They really do a very professional and as accurate a job as you can do with an inaccurate world.
The one thing that was kind of sticking with me with Lisa's presentation was this thing with SCTV and the programming in the program room. You know, getting
Oh.
that technology coordinated with SCTV so that, I mean, because this board uses that room for a variety of meetings, and we've come to rely on that for sort of our big space when
Well,
we need it.
one thing we could do is if they pass the Cushman thing at the Board of Finance, that does open up some on CNR.
Yeah.
So you could keep that flat and put in some SCT funding there if you wanted.
Well, if that's the real number, if she's, you know, what'd she say, 14 something? I don't know if that's the actual number or not, but
But she did say they found it within their current budget to do
Yeah, that's
that.
where their surplus is.
Yeah.
Sensible to put those in.
Right.
They're favorable.
It would not be to put those in.
Yeah.
It would just simply be so that the technology could match up. And I know part of what's been going on even in this room is SCTV unfortunately also has some budget limitations, and they've been slow, and maybe Mike could help to move over from analog to digital.
And they're currently, I believe, just if the public doesn't know this, seeking matching funds for a
Yes,
quite
they are.
substantial grant. So,
We
you
love
know, a
you,
lot of people are,
SCTV.
I know, a lot of people are dropping cable, and actually SCTV gets funding from a tiny little portion of your big cable bill. And even if you just throw a couple dollars a month as a donation, it's going
Yeah.
to be more money than they would get off your cable bill. So if you're cutting your cable, consider making a donation.
Pennies per
Thank
home
you.
per month.
Yeah, it is a good investment.
Yeah,
Like-
well, I just think as a board, we rely on that a lot, and so we are placing demands on them that, you know, perhaps we don't have.
And I would just give kudos to SCTV, who stayed the whole 6 hours on
Exactly.
Saturday. Thank you, SCTV. All right, any other questions about the budget? Well, probably this means we will be scheduling for Wednesday, which was one of our tentative dates. I will be seeing you tomorrow. Let me know if you want me to order food or anything before the meeting at the Board
On the
of
budget.
Finance. And we'll start. Well, actually, I paid for the last one, so that was not taxpayer expense. So there are ways we can,
We can take up a collection.
yeah, we can do a collection.
Or TikTok.
All right, so Wednesday.
Tic Tac.
Yeah, Tic Tacs and coffee for everyone.
Right, the taxpayers did pay for the lunch, but not for the pizza. Yeah. Any other questions before we move on? Budget, is there any more information people need before Wednesday?
Just what's gonna happen tomorrow.
I don't know, because we're gonna get a lot of
was gonna say,
information
maybe
tomorrow,
we'll
because
know
I've got the
more.
CCM meeting in the morning at 8:30, by the way, so if we could
Yeah.
wrap this up kind of quick, that would be great.
So moved.
In Meriden. And then we'll have the Board of Finance, and so we'll have more information, but it would be very, to the extent you guys can be there, it would be just wonderful to have you there. We're not done, I'm sorry. We gotta get through the budget.
The only thing I
The
would,
agenda.
would ask Lisa,
Yeah.
if you and Sean can look at whatever we get, the feedback we get from the Board of Finance tomorrow night, if we need to have anything prepared for us, you guys bring it to Wednesday's meeting.
We'll do our best. There's not a lot of, yeah.
I know.
Yeah. We will, of course we will.
So,
Yeah.
Wednesday, we're starting at 6? Is that, what time is?
5:30.
5:30,
Yeah.
okay.
Okay, so we have a
Good thing
few
we
more
asked these
agenda
things.
items, so we'll just zip through those if you don't mind. Update on the Senior Community Center, just quick, it's back at building right now. They're gonna do another design with, quick design, space concept to make sure, to see if, another option if the building's attached. So we'll have some better ideas from there after that. We have appointments and resignations. May I have a motion to reappoint Dick Ostap to the Hartford Area Cable Television Advisory Council with an expiration date of June 30th, 2017?
So moved.
second?
So Elaine and then Mike. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
May I have a motion to reappoint Kenneth N. Picard to the Hartford Area Television Advisory Council with an expiration date of June 30th, 2017?
So moved. Second?
No.
Okay, so Mike on the first, Sean on the second. Any further
prejudice.
discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
We have before you the review of the minutes. If anyone has any changes to them, let me know. Otherwise, those minutes will stand.
Looking good.
All right. Good to me. Does anyone have any liaison or subcommittee reports? I hope not.
We'll forego that.
But I do want to actually just say, that we did have Tall Cop today at the high school, and it's
did.
being presented tonight, so thank you.
Did you see Tall Cop?
I did not. I was not able to get there.
Oh, well, I was there with Mickey and Sue Homework Lemke, and it was a lot of fun. It was informative. The freshman and sophomore classes were all there, and they were fully engaged in this discussion with Tall Cop, and, you know, he made it interesting in a way that I'm sure those kids are going to walk out, they're going to remember that, you know, the final answer to that question was C, and they got candy afterwards, but it was, you know, it made a lot of information a lot more palatable to, you know, a lot of very impressionable young minds,
And
which
it's about
was
drug
great.
abuse and
it was,
prevention.
yeah, and, you know, I think we all learned a lot about, you know, alcohol use, drug abuse, what drugs are involved, you know, how much more powerful some drugs are now than what, you know, used to be, you know, maybe 30 or 40 years
And
ago.
I think the discussion tonight is being taped by SCTV, is that right?
Yeah.
So,
I honestly, I don't know.
oh, okay. Well, hopefully.
It was just for parents,
Oh.
not students, so I don't know.
So we'll look into that and get an update on what's
Yeah.
in. All right,
But
so
really worthwhile.
thank you guys for organizing. May I have a motion to dismiss?
So moved.
Second?
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Or I guess adjourn. That would be adjourn.
That will be adjourned.
We're talking about the schools and all of a sudden. we
I
say
know,
this.
don't get me going, and I'll,
right, thanks,
it's like
everyone.
shooting me. Make her stop talking.